Okay, so what I wanted to do today was take a look at some of the captures that Neural DSP includes on the Quad Cortex as part of the releases. And I realized recently that although I've made my own captures and looked at captures on the Cortex cloud and even purchased some captures from third parties, I hadn't spent a lot of time getting to know the captures that Neural DSP creates and includes on the device. And when I was looking through them, I found that they have some captures of a Tone King Imperial. And that caught my eye because I recently spent money buying captures from Amalgam, and one of the capture packs I bought was the Tone King Imperial. And I did a video on those capture packs I bought from Amalgam. I'll put the link here. Short version is, they're definitely worth the money. They're super well made. They sound great. And if you really want those amp captures, you won't be disappointed. But I wanted to see how the Neural DSP captures would stack up against those super high quality captures that Amalgam creates. So I figured, let's put them in some presets and test them out. So what I've done here is I've set up a preset for each set of captures. You can see here's the Amalgam, here's the Neural DSP ones. And each preset is basically the same except for the captures. So we've got a exotic Z boost, so an RC booster up front, so we can push the front of these captures a little bit, see how they react. And then we've got 4 captures in kind of ascending levels of gain. So this would be kind of a clean all the way through the most distorted. I'm running all the captures through a dual IR loader block, and I'm actually using some of the free IRs that Amalgam makes available. So there's the Tone King 1x12 and this Fender 2x12, and I have a little bit of delay on the Fender one just to give it a fullness. And then we've just got an analog delay and a plateless reverb for some ambience. But you can see both presets are exactly the same except for those captures. So let's talk about the Amalgam captures, and let's start with the naming convention. So Amalgam has a really useful naming convention that's very easy to understand. If you can see, TK, Tone King Imperial is the amp that they've captured. RH is the channel in this case, so that's the rhythm channel. They talk about the level of gain, and they have multiple levels of gain. So you've got clean, edge, crunch, lead, maybe 1 or 2 more. This next one, WRM, means warm. That's the EQ setting of the amp. So again, they have 4 or 5 EQ settings. There's bright, balanced, warm, fat, and maybe 1 more. And then DI means this is a DI'd amplifier. There's no cabinet involved in creating the capture. And I will say, we're going to focus on the DI captures here today. Amalgam does have captures that include the whole thing, the amp and the cabinet. And I think that's the direction going forward, is to focus on those. But the DI captures are really good. And I wanted to do the DI captures because the Neural DSP captures are DI captures, meaning there's no cab included in it. So I figured that's the best apples to apples comparison. So if you think about it, just by doing the math, you talk about there's 2 channels on this, there's 4 or 5 different levels of gain, 4 or 5 different EQs. You can see just by doing the math, we've got 20, 30, maybe or more total captures that are included in this pack of all the variations. And not only are those naming conventions really helpful, but Amalgam provides a PDF with all the specifics on each capture on exactly how the amp was set. So you can know what the settings were. So you can know what the settings were on each capture in terms of the amp settings. Let's look at what Neural DSP does. So Neural DSP, naming convention, not as helpful. So you can see here it says Tune Royal, which is their kind of name for Tone King. They can't put Tone King in there because they're not paying Tone King for that trademark. You can see it's a Mark II. They tell you that in the manual that this is a Tone King Imperial. And you can see it says 10. What that is they have, in this case, a total of 13 captures. But that number really doesn't tell you very much. So initially, my assumption was, well, maybe 1 is the least amount of gain, and then it runs through 13, which would be the most amount of gain, and there's some variations in between. But that's not the case either. There's really no rhyme or reason to the numbering system. It's just they have 13 captures, and they number them 1 through 13. So when you think about 10, which is actually kind of my clean tone here, if you go to 1, there's really no systematic approach to how these are put together that I can tell. And Neural DSP does not publish any information about what the settings were when they captured these amps. So you're really just left to get in there and try each one and see which ones you like. And there's no easy starting point to go, oh, I know I want a clean warm, I'm going to go for that one. You just have to kind of peck at it and find the ones that work for you. So I think what you see is, in terms of the number of captures and the quality of the information around each capture and what it is and what the setup was, Amalgam is head and shoulders above what Neural DSP is going to give you. But let's look at how they sound. So let's start with the Tone King. And the way I've got this preset set up is I've got scene set up. So E through H are the different captures. And then what I did is A through D are those same captures, but adding in the boost up front. So let's start off with the cleanest capture and compare. And right off the bat, one thing I want you to notice is I've tweaked this capture in terms of I've pushed the gain a little bit, I'm pushing the bass and the mids. I'm trying to warm up this capture because it's not as warm as the warm one on the Amalgam. You can see here on the Amalgam, I haven't changed anything. I think on some of the presets, maybe I'm pushing the volume down a little bit just because they were a little loud and I needed to balance out the overall preset a little bit. But other than that, I'm not tweaking the EQ at all. I'm just using them as is. So that's kind of the first thing I would say is for the Neural DSP ones, I found it necessary to do some EQ tweaking to get them the way I wanted them to sound. But here's the cleanest capture that I like on the Neural DSP. And let's try the Amalgam. Same here, the cleanest capture with no boost or anything. So one thing you can hear I think the Amalgam captures have a fullness to them that the Neural DSP captures don't have. And I don't think that means that the Neural DSP captures were made poorly. I just think that the amp settings that Neural DSP used aren't quite as full as what Amalgam used, especially because I'm using, again, the warm EQ setting. I think what we're seeing there is your ability to tweak a capture via the EQ that's in the capture that pales in comparison to what you can do with the amp when you're in the room, right? And the EQ is going to behave differently and you're going to get different results from it. So generally, I'm finding that I can't get as much fullness out of the Neural DSP captures than I do from the Amalgam. But the Neural DSP captures, I still think they sound good. It sounds good, it feels good. It's just not quite exactly the way I would want it. And I think the Amalgam, because of the more options around the different captures, I was able to find a capture that worked better for me. But let's boost it and hear the difference. So here's the Neural DSP clean tone with the boost in front of it. So they both work pretty well. Let's go to a little more gain. So here's the Amalgam. That's the edge form. Let's do the Neural DSP. So again, you can hear not as much warmth to it. Let's boost it. Still sounds good, but just not as much warmth as you get from the amalgams. And the other thing I would say, if we go to the higher gain ones, the amalgam captures generally have a lot more usable gain in terms of getting into more breakup. So, for instance, this one, which I think is the crunch. If you compare it to the crunch here, and even the more gain from the Neural DSP. You just get a little more grit from the amalgam. If we go to the higher gain one of the amalgam, there's a lot of gain. Whereas on the Neural DSP, even when you kick in the boost on the front, you're not getting as much gain out of it. So I find that this one actually kind of sounds like this one. So I think in general, I would say this. The Neural DSP captures aren't bad. They aren't as good, and they aren't as complete as what you'll get from amalgam. So I think it really comes down to how important is it to you to have this Tone King Imperial captures in terms of how invested are you in using it. If all you want to do is kind of play around with those tones and just try something different, I think the Neural DSP ones, you can play around with those and kind of scratch that itch, so to speak. If you really want that tone, and that's something you really want to build your rig around, I think the amalgam ones give you much more capability. I think they give you that extra whatever percentage of quality to them. They definitely give you more quantity and more information to make your choices and know what to use. But I think generally, even the good Neural DSP captures aren't as good as the ones from amalgam. But the ones from Neural DSP are there. And if you just want to say, I want to try out a Tone King, I would start there before dumping money into amalgam. But I do think there is the justifiable value that you get from the amalgam captures that are better than what you're getting from the free Neural DSP ones. And I use the term free loosely because obviously you paid for the device. That's why Neural DSP is giving them to you. But you don't have to pay extra for them, where the amalgam ones cost you either, I think, $15 for their Essentials pack, which is kind of a smaller number of capture sets, or you get the full one, which is like $35 somewhere in there. Like I said, I'll be digging more into the Neural DSP captures because I want to see, are there any gems in there that are really worth using? As I find the things I might like, I'll post videos and talk about them. But for now, I think the Tone King Imperial ones on the Neural DSP are good. And if you're looking at trying that out, maybe try those out. If you like it, but you really feel like you want a little bit more, then look at the amalgam ones. I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for watching.